Okay, so you got two handouts today. The first one is exercise 201, and the second one, or excuse me, that is assignment 201, and the second one is exercise 206, which is what we're going to do in class today. I want to talk a little bit about the assignment. Unlike 135, where we always kind of had an assignment, it was every 1 week, every 2 weeks, you'll notice that the due date for this assignment is 9/26, right? So you have about a month to work on this. That should tell you something about my level of expectation about how good it should be, right? Because you have lots of time to work on it. You probably don't have the skills right now to do everything on this assignment, which is part of why this first assignment takes so long, okay? And so that's to be expected. There's a lot of things that we're going to be learning in the coming weeks that will help you to be able to do this assignment and to be ready for it, etc. So for right now, like, for example, if you finish work today early, it's a good idea to look at what other people have done, look on the website, see what people have done, try to get some ideas, sketch out some stuff, try to figure out what's working. This will probably evolve a lot over the next, 3 or 4 weeks before it's actually due. But I'm giving it to you now because it's time to start working on it and thinking about it, etc., as you're learning the skills. So today in exercise 206, once again, we're focusing on really learning about how to model things. And thus far, everything that we've modeled have been rectangles, boxes, those kinds of objects. It's time to start in the somewhat flexible objects. We haven't gotten to what I love to call fuzzy objects just yet, which are curtains and cloth and pillows and that kind of stuff. We'll get there. But we need to move from the very rigid, square, rectangle sort of setup into something that's a little bit more fluid. And so today we're really going to cover tubes and sweeps and those kinds of things. And I'm going to show you kind of how that works. I will model what we're going to model today, but I'll also go off on a bunch of tangents to show you kind of what these things can do as we work through them. So I've gone ahead and I've opened Rhino. I have a new document, large object inches, ready to start drawing. And like is normally the case, I'm going to start with kind of the basics with just a line, and I'm going to work with that line. So we'll start first with an arc. And so we have this arc start, center, and end, this first one. Okay? And I'm going to specify on the screen where I want it to occur. The truth is that this curve could exist anywhere. It doesn't really matter. But it's asking me for the center of the arc. So I'm going to go ahead and do a absolute coordinate of 2 inches, 0 inches, right? Which is going to put it 2 inches over, right, from the origin. And I'm going to start there. Then I'm going to start my arc at 0, 0. There it is. And I'm going to, oops. Hold on a second. 2, 0. And we're going to go 0, 0 for the start of the arc. And the end of the arc, is going to be right here at vertical. Okay, so I'll go ahead and draw that. There's my arc. Then I'm going to draw a line. So I'm going to come back to the polyline tool, start at the end here, and I'm going to go over by 13 inches. There it is. I'll hit enter. And then I'll come back to the arc tool once again. And I could do a start and end in a direction, for example, where I do start. The end would be at 2, -2. Oops, 2, -2. And my direction would be in that direction. Just a different tool to make the arc. Doesn't matter how you create the arcs. Okay? But I'll make those, and they're actually 3 separate segments. There, there, and there. I want those all to be one segment, so I'll select them all and go up to Edit, Join, or actually just type Join. Either way. Okay? Now, I could also do this just as a polyline. And so if I started the polyline, say, here in space, I can change the polyline. See how it says mode right there? I can change from mode to arc. So you see that I'm starting to create the arc first. And I could draw it that way. To me, this is much harder to work with. So I'd rather instead just draw them as separate and then join them together. Okay? And how you choose to draw it is really, it's up to you. Okay? For me, it's easiest to do this first one where I specify the center and then the start at the end. Okay? So now that I have this, the next thing that I need to do is rotate it three-dimensionally so that it's up in position, because right now it's flat with the ground. So I'm going to look in the perspective view here for a second, and I'm going to rotate this object using the rotate 3D command, which is something we've been doing in the past. Again, we're going to do it right now. I'll go up to transform, rotate 3D, and my rotation axis is going to be right here along the x-axis. So I'll start here and end there. Then my reference line is going to go up the y-axis, and I'll fold that so that it's standing up in 3 dimensions that way. Okay? Now that I have that done, I'm going to come over to the origin right here, and right there I'm going to draw a circle with a diameter of a 1/2 inch. Okay? So by default it says radius of 1, right? If I want a diameter of a 1/2 inch, the radius would have to be 1/4 inch, right? Or I can choose diameter and then type in, oh, I want the diameter to be 0.5 inches. Okay? So there it is. So once again, I have this curve and I have this curve. So I have the circle and I have this curve. Okay? Now I want to end up ultimately making a tube that starts here and follows along this curve and ends over there. So Rhino has a great tool built in to do this, and it's called a sweep. And so what a sweep does is it takes one curve and sweeps it along another curve to create a surface. So let me show you. So I'm going to go up to surface, and I'm going to choose sweep 1 rail, or type just sweep 1. First thing it says is select rail. That's this curve. Then it says select cross-section curve. That would be this curve. And then when I'm done, I press enter. It asks me if I want to adjust the seam. The seam is fine. I'll go ahead and press enter. And you see that it builds, right, basically a pipe for me out of this. So if I were to look at this in shaded mode, we could see it a little bit better, right? There it is. Okay? I've left the style as freeform for right now. Okay? There are other options in here, and we'll talk about what those mean in just a second. But for right now, we're going to go with freeform. Okay? So I'll go ahead and I'll say OK. So this has now created that pipe for me. That's part of this little spider adapter for a piece of glass. Okay? So what about if I wanted to create something a little bit more complicated? Let's say I wanted to create like a bridge or a path or something along those lines. Let me go ahead and create a curve. And this is just for example. You guys aren't going to have to do this. But let's say I go like this. Let me turn off ortho here. All right. And I'm making a few adjustments here. So you can see what this does. All right, so all I've done here is I've made a curve that floats up in space. You guys kind of see how that goes up in space right now? Okay. And so what I'll do is I'll say, OK, well, let me create a cross-section curve. Maybe we'll start with a little rectangle. Something like that. Let me rotate this 3D. So I'll take this piece, rotate 3D. We'll go right along this axis. And we'll fold that down like that. OK, so see how I have that little cross-section curve? And now I'm going to sweep. So I'll go up to transform, or excuse me, surface, sweep 1 rail. That's my rail. There's my cross-section curve. And we'll go ahead and press enter. There's my seam. Okay? And it creates basically this path that's cruising along. Okay? Now, right now, you see as we come up here, it looks pretty good in this first section. But as we come across here, it starts to get a little skewed, and then by the end, it's kind of tipping and banking down. Okay? I can switch from the freeform option to roadlike top and hit preview. And now it's going to keep it flat all the way along. See how it's always flat? It hasn't started to bank at all. So that may be an option if you're creating some kind of a bridge. So the point is that you start to have this flexibility in terms of the kinds of things you can create. Any shape that you can create, you can sweep along a rail. Okay? The other thing that I can do, so there's our first option. Let me take, let me finish this there. Let me take the curve and the end here. Whoops. Oh, come on. Let me take the curve and the rail, and I'm just going to copy them, put them over here. All right, and let me take this curve, and I'm going to copy it in place. So I have a second one, and then I'm going to turn my points on for it, and I'm going to make some adjustments. So let's drag this one over there. Let's drag this one over here. And let's take this one and this one, and we'll drag those back that way. Like that. Let's make those over there. Okay, so now I have two curves. Okay, at the beginning, right, they look like the nice path. Okay, then as I move up, the curves get further away from each other. Okay, I can, instead of doing a sweep 1, I can sweep 2. Okay, it's going to say select the first rail. There's the first rail. Select the second rail. There's the second rail. Select the cross-section curve. There it is. And now when I do it, instead of being tied to just one side, see how this was consistent? The cross-section stayed the same all the way along, right? Now the cross-section gets smaller or bigger depending on how far away the two curves are from each other. So you see over here it gets really big, right? And then it gets back small. Okay, so it's following the two. The shape grows or gets smaller depending on what you're trying to do. So you can have a lot of flexibility in what this sweep can do. Okay, for right now we're concerned mostly with just the sweep 1 with a simple cross-section curve. The other thing that's important to note that sometimes people leave out, let me get rid of this for a second, is that the rail and the cross-section do not have to touch. They don't actually have to be anywhere close to each other. I could take this, for example, and put it over here. And I could say, let's sweep one rail. That's the rail. That's the cross-section curve. There's the seam. And it will still follow along that curve, just further away from where that curve is. Does that make sense? Okay. So it doesn't matter that they're next to each other or touching. They can be off in space. All right? So that's some more information about how these sweeps work. And obviously, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about sweeps today. So let's zoom back in on this little pipe that we were working on. Okay? And so the next piece is that I'm going to create some little buttons that end up at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and use a cylinder to make my life easy. And I'll start at the center. The diameter of this cylinder is 1.5 inches. So I'm going to say 1.5 inches. Now, if I just did that, it would make a radius. It would be too big. So I need to switch to diameter and then type 1.5 inches. There it is. And my thickness, I'm trying to remember. Let's do it 1/4 inch thick. So I'll say 0.25 inches. Okay. That went up instead of down. So I really should have typed negative 0.25. So let me try that one more time. And I'm looking at the instructions here, and I said to make a curve and then extrude the curve. Just another way of doing it. If you use the cylinder, it's fine. Okay, so my diameter is 1.5 inches, and I'm going to go negative 0.25 inches down. And there's the first button. Okay, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to copy this down. And so we'll go down maybe 1 inch. I'm going to switch my view, though, into this view. Turn on ortho, and then I'll type in 1 inch so I can see where that goes down. Actually, that should have been 3/4 inch. Let me put it back. 0.25 inches. There you go. Okay, so I have those two. There they are, separate from each other. I'm ultimately going to put a little pane of glass in between the two. Okay, so let me take these two, and I'm going to copy these from right there. to the other end right there. And now I have this little base. Okay? Good. All right, so the next piece is I'm actually going to do a regular rotate on this object to rotate it so that it's kind of a diagonal X right now. Okay? So I'll use the rotate command. I'm going to go up to transform. This is regular rotate. And I'm going to start right here. And I'm going to go from this x-axis. And this time, instead of jumping to 90, I'm actually going to go ahead and just type 45, which is going to put it at 45 degrees right there. Okay? So now I can take this piece and I can copy it. So I'll type copy or go to transform copy. And I'm going to take it from this point and take it 1 foot in this direction, like that. Okay. Then I'll take the second piece here, and I'll go back to transform, rotate. Again, right from that point. This time it would be negative 90. And there it is, and the two cross nicely. That's what I'm trying to create. Okay. There are, however, a variety of other ways of doing this. Okay. So if I were doing it, for example, there it is. I would take this piece, select it. I would copy. So I type copy. I'll type I for in place, which puts one right on top of the other. Enter. Then I'd immediately go to rotate. And I'd rotate right from the center, the midpoint there, at negative 90. And I create the second version that way. Okay? So notice I didn't have to select. It was just one to the next to the next. The more efficient that you become in Rhino, the more you get used to which object is previously selected and how fast you can go through a set of commands based on what's selected and what stays selected. Okay? So I now have that. The next piece of this is to draw the little spire, and then there's a donut on the end of it. Okay? And so I'm going to go through this rather quickly. I'm going to show you what it looks like and do it live for you. But this is really starting to be a test of your abilities. But I at least want you to see what it is and kind of how I would go about doing it. But at some point, you have to start modeling on your own and figuring out what the right order of steps is. So the first half is very much walked through. So steps 1 through 9, right? Step 10 starts to ask you to do something for yourself. Okay? So this piece is going to stick up a total of 2 feet from the ground. Right? So from right here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw over here a line. Oops. Let me switch to my line at 2 feet. All right, so there's a 2-foot line. At the end here, I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle. Right? And this circle is going to have a diameter of 3/8 of an inch. There it is. And then I'll go ahead and draw another circle. There's the 3/8. Another circle with a diameter of 1 3/4 inches. So 1.75 inches. There it is. Okay? And so I need to do a couple things. Right? I need to create the rod, which is going to be a sweep, and I need to create the little donut at the end. Okay? So the rod's easy. Let me take a line here. This is going to be a 1/2 inch, so I'll do 0.5. There is a drawing, by the way, on the back that can walk you through with some dimensions and stuff. For whatever reason, sometimes people are a little confused with the drawing. It's a plan. It's basically a front elevation view here, side elevation view of the spike thing from one side, and this view is a side elevation looking at it where it's parallel to or perpendicular to the cross-section piece, so you can see the full length of the piece. Okay. Anyway, so let me go ahead. I have this little 1/2 inch rod here. I'm going to rotate 3D. So I'll go up to transform, rotate 3D. and pull that up in the third dimension like that. Then I'm going to sweep one, so I'll go to Surface, sweep one rail. That's my rail. That's my cross-section curve. There it is. Okay. Then when I get to this end, right, I have a rail, or I have two rails, but I still need the cross-section curve. So I'm going to come over here to the Circle tool, but instead of the standard center radius or center diameter, right, I'm going to use this one, which is 2 points, and I'm just picking the diameter. So I'm going to go right here from there over to right there. And you see how it creates that third circle between the two? Now I'll rotate 3D on this circle. So let me go to Surface, or excuse me, Transform, Rotate 3D. We'll fold that up in space like that. And now I can sweep around either one of these. So I'll go to Sweep 1. We'll pick this one. Cross-section curve is right here. And I'll go ahead and press Enter, and then Enter. And it will build this nice little donut on the end. Okay? And you still need to do a little bit of trimming, because obviously this sticks through. So let me go ahead and take this piece. I'll type Trim, or go to Edit Trim. And we'll get rid of those pieces that intersect it, like that. I could take it a step further if I wanted to and switch from shaded mode into wireframe and get rid of that piece there so that I only had that intersection. Okay? When I'm done, I'll press Enter. We can switch back to shaded mode, and now you see that I have the nice little donut that's on the end there. I have the rod. And now I need to assemble this and put it on top of this particular piece. Okay? So let me go ahead and I'll take this, and I'm going to do a Rotate 3D. So we'll go to Transform, Rotate 3D. We'll start at the bottom, come out along that direction here, and fold it up so that it's standing vertically. All right. And then this piece ends up lining up right in the center of this X. Okay? And sometimes when we're doing this kind of work, you just need an extra line. You need a little guideline for yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and draw one extra line that goes from there across to right there. And that line will allow me to take this piece and to move it right from the center. So I just type Move, or go to Transform, Move, right from there right to the midpoint there, which conveniently intersects right at the intersection of these two pieces. Okay? So once again, we have to do a little bit of trimming work. So let me take this and this as my cutting objects. Trim. And we can start by trimming below. But again, it would be nice if I clean this up just a little bit more. So let me go ahead and switch into wireframe mode. And we're going to get rid of that piece. Switch back and make sure I pick the right piece. Yeah, perfect. I'm going to get rid of that piece, that piece. Oops, wrong one. Control Z. There. Okay. Looks like maybe I left behind a little bit right there. That needs to go away. Right. And actually, it might be easier to switch back into wireframe, and we can start to see, yeah, that piece needs to go away, that needs to go away, that needs to go away. There. So now I have that nice little piece at the top. Okay. Now, one of the advantages of modeling is that even though I have these extra little curves that are guides, those long term won't render when I go to render this piece. Okay, so I don't really have to stress out about those. All right, so now that I have this, I'm going to add a little piece of glass. And again, I'm going to start right there at that point. I'll do just a box from right there. This is going to be at 4 feet, 6 feet. And the thickness is going to be 0.5 inches. Oops, I went up. It should have been negative 0.5 inches. Move that back down there. And actually it needs to go down another 1/2 inch, or another 1/4 of an inch. There we go. And so now that piece of glass is nicely sandwiched between those two little buttons. It meets up right at this corner. Okay? So now that I have this piece, I need one little cable, a little steel cable that goes from the center going out this direction. I'll draw from the center. Let me turn on my center snap. Draw right there from the center. We're going to go this direction by 6 feet. Like that. I'm going to take the little curve circle that's right there, and I'll use that as my sweep. So we'll go to surface, sweep one rail. There's my rail. There's my circle. Enter, enter. All right, there's the little cable. OK, so now that I have this, I'm going to start to get it ready for its final rendering. OK, so I'll go ahead and let's save it. First thing, I'll go to File, Save. And let's put this into today's folder. Today, I don't think I have a folder. Exercise 206. And this is glass with spider. By the way, just so that you guys can visually see what this thing is that I've been having you draw, if you do a Google image search for glass, spider, lamp, right, something along these lines. See that? Right, the little buttons hold it together. There's the little spider. That's a little tension cable. What I'm drawing is far less sophisticated than a lot of these, but this is along the line. Sometimes it's helpful for you guys to see essentially what I was trying to have you model. Does that kind of make sense for what these are? Okay. So we're not worried about shear strength and whatever. We're just kind of going simple. But essentially, this is what we're modeling. OK, so I need to rotate this into the third direction. So we'll take the whole object, and I'm going to go up to Transform, Rotate 3D. And we're going to rotate from the glass here, there, to right there. We'll fold that whole thing up. Then I'm going to move this so that this corner right there is on 0, 0, 0. So it's right there on the origin. And now it's time to start applying some materials to this. Okay? So first thing, I'd like to organize my file a little bit better. Right now I have just everything is on the default layer. Okay? So I'm going to create a new set of layers. The first one is this is going to be on a layer called glass. So let me go ahead and change layer 3. So I'm going to change object layer. It turns blue, and then I'm going to call this glass. I picked blue just because it's kind of glass-like. And then we'll take this whole clamp assembly, and I'm going to change that to be on this layer 1. And I'll rename layer 1 to be something like metal clamp. Okay, so now it's easy. Those are in separate layers. We'll get rid of the rest of the layers. Let's make the metal clamp layer active. Let's get rid of the default layer. There we go. So we have just 2 layers, nice and clean. And now I'm going to load up some materials for these pieces. So let me go ahead and I'm going to go to File, or excuse me, I'm going to go up to my V-Ray toolbar, go to Materials, right-click on C Materials, Load Material, and I'll go to my flash drive, and I'll go into my V-Ray Materials. And the glass is really hard to load because no matter what we do, glass is really never going to look that great because we don't have sky and stuff to reflect. But we'll give it a shot. I'm going to go ahead and open up glass. And let's do, let's try the blue glass and see. Okay, so I'll go ahead and open. I have blue glass. The preview of glass always looks weird, right? So it looks like it's kind of this chromey mirrored thing. That's just the way it works. Let me also load some kind of a metal object. So let's go into metal, and let's go to, say, aluminum. Let's do a shiny, let's do a matte aluminum. If we look at it, there it is. Okay? So I want instead, previously we selected the object and we right-clicked on it and said assign material. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these materials and right-click on the material, so the aluminum first, right-click, and I'm going to say apply material not to selection but to layer. So everything on that layer will then have this material assigned to it. So we'll apply to layer, and it's going to be the metal clamp. Say OK. The glass is going to be applied to the glass layer, so apply material to layer, glass. Okay. So now I have the materials applied. Okay. If I were to render right now, right, it would be on a black backdrop and we'd barely see anything. Okay, it's there, but it's hard to see. Okay, so let's go ahead and add an infinite plane underneath, right there. That cuts off part of my drawing. So let's move the whole thing up a little bit. All right, I'm just going to move it up so it's floating a little bit. And let's try to do another render here and see if we can see anything. All right, so there's a piece of glass and there's a little spider clamp. In this case, it's a little bit hard to see, probably because I don't have any kind of light in the scene. Let me throw a directional light in. Remember, it's the one that's hidden. I'll go there to there. Let's delete that. And let's try a render now. All right, we're getting a nice shadow, right, being cast through those. Seems pretty good. Part of the reason my background is gray is because I don't have this assigned to a default material. So let me go into materials. Let me create a new default material. Create material standard. Let's make it a light gray. And let me apply it to the selection so it's applied there. And then we can render again. We're going to have a much whiter backdrop. Okay. This might be a little bit hard to see. I can adjust that by going back to my materials and changing this one from being light gray maybe to being just gray. And we'll try it again. Yeah, it's a little bit more reasonable. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to save both the Rhino file, which we're going to use again. Okay, so don't lose that one. Save the rendering, this one. Once you have the rendering, that's what you'll post to the course website, but save the 3DM file on your flash drive for later, okay, because we'll use it again. All right, are there any questions? I know I went faster through the second half, but it's kind of a test for how you're doing, right? So I walk you step by step through the first bit, then you see how you do in the second bit, and this is the end product. All right?